Hello, Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie, is there a way that we can queue in on Zoom and actually see what's going on, or is it all by phone?
No, if you go to our website and you scroll down to meetings and agendas, right beside the agenda for this meeting, there's a button that says join meeting. You can click on it and join regular Zoom.
Okay, that's what I'll do. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're live and ready to go.
Ready to go, Mel?
We're ready to go.
Okay, so I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of a pecuniary interest? Mr.
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes, on page 37 of the agenda, under discussion of short-term rental accommodations, I believe that the dot that is in Desaunier represents myself. I would just add to that that's probably historical, because the house that I used to have on Airbnb is now rented long-term. And the cabin that sleep cabin that I have is also not on the market anymore, but I do believe that represents myself. So transparency, there you go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other pecuniary interest to declare this time? No? Okay. We'll move to the approval of the agenda for December 13th. Or I guess we have to log in, eh? No, good. Am I on track here?
We're good. You're good.
Okay, approval of the agenda of December 13th.
I just need a mover and a seconder, please.
There we go.
Yvonne?
And Chris?
Chris? It is moved by Yvonne Zuhaim and seconded by Chris Fisher. Be it resolved that the agenda for the Planning Advisory Committee meeting of December the 13th, 2021 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. I'll move to the adoption of minutes meeting of November 15th. I need a mover, a seconder. Chris and Dan.
It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Dan Revita. Be it resolved that the minutes of the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee meeting held on November the 15th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Carried. So I guess we move along to 2113.
And I'll get a mover and a seconder, please. Chris? No. It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Yvonne Zuhaim. Whereas a public meeting was held for the purpose of amending zoning bylaw 2014-45 for property located at 13117 Highway 17 in Sturgeon Falls. And whereas no written concerns or objections have been received, be it resolved that the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee recommends or does not recommend that that Council for the West Nipissing Municipality adopt the proposed zoning bylaw to rezone the property at 13117 Highway 17 from rural residential to rural residential 4, the residential exception zone 4, in order to construct an accessory dwelling on the property. Through you, Mr. Chair, this application is similar to that which we've seen before us on previous occasions. The applicant is seeking to construct a secondary structure on their property, a second dwelling on their property, in order to accommodate a home for aging parents. The property is sufficiently large enough, has sufficient frontage, an existing entrance permit, and will not exceed the lot coverage requirements for this zone with this second dwelling.
Where is that, Madam Clerk?
Just outside of, just on the east side of town. Just at the beginning of, just before Sandy Falls. Or just before Riding Stable, sorry, just before Riding Stable Road.
That's not Large J, is it?
No.
It's after that.
After that, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, it could be almost across from the new service station there that they have
Yeah.
built on the house. Yeah.
okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll open up the floor for the committee. Mr. Ravita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The construction of secondary structure, the property is large enough. Can you define what the property, how big the property is, and what is the large enough?
Well, the property is 1 acre, which is about 210 by 210-ish. By large enough, meaning it has sufficient frontage. It does have the minimum 60-meter frontage. It does have the minimum, it was created under a previous jurisdiction. So it does, at the time, 1 acre was the standard for an unserviced property. And the maximum lot coverage for that lot would be 15%. And I think in my report, I think it's just 13. I have to look up what I put. It doesn't exceed the maximum lot coverage for that zone, which includes all the structures on the property, including the sheds and outbuildings and whatnot. Go ahead.
It's under that 10% you were saying.
Yeah, it's 10 plus 5. So it's 10 for principal structures and 15 in total, including accessory. And it does, you'll see the calculations are on the sketch. So the total lot area, total lot coverage will be 6.46%, which is well within the limits.
Supplement, Mr. Ravita.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Melanie. So to put, this is a standalone building.
That's correct.
Okay, and to put a standalone building on a piece of property such as this, you have to have that 1 acre, you have to have the 6-meter frontage, and it has to be within that 15% of the total.
Yes, you would always have to meet, the 1 acre is a, this lot is an acre. So it would always depend on the size of the property. It could, if it's an existing property and it might be less than, as long as it doesn't exceed that lot coverage amount. The lot coverage amount is standard. So the lot might be a little bit smaller or bigger, but the amount of coverage stays the same.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments, questions, Mr. Fisher?
I'll just say that I know the previous owners of this property, and so I spent a lot of time. I know exactly where that is, and judging by the layout on the continuing slides, you know, no one's going to know that. There's no neighbors to bug, and I don't see any problems with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll move along to the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay.
And we'll go to the bylaws, I guess, amendment.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, can I just, I know there are people on the line that want to have things to say. I would ask that I just wanted to, if you want to let them know what the procedure is for, participation.
Okay, Madam Clerk. So what we're going to do is discuss the proposed amendments on the committee level. So every committee member gets a chance to speak. After which we'll go to the public and ask for comments or questions, and we'll ask that you state your name and address in case this is carried over to appeal. And if you need some French translation, you can speak French and we'll translate. So is that pretty well it, Madam
That's
Clerk?
it, and I just ask anyone who is either on the phone or on a computer, if you could just keep your mic on mute. Just because sometimes it creates interference.
So do you have any opening statements, Madam Clerk?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you'll recall back in, I believe 2 meetings ago, we had a conversation about some housekeeping amendments to the comprehensive bylaw. So these are changes to the zoning bylaw being brought forward by the municipality itself, as opposed to by a specific applicant. And you'll recall that some of them were, I went through them at length at the meeting, and then the rationale behind them, and I did include all of that in your package. I suppose the big two that are being proposed on this, then the ones that we've received the most questions and comments, concerns about, would be with respect to the accessory dwelling, which we just covered in the previous application, some of the requirements, and also with regard to storage containers on shoreline residential properties. And as members of this committee will recall, we see these applications coming to us on a fairly regular basis. The Committee of Adjustment is seeing the shoreline, the containers and the galvanized steel structures. And this committee is seeing accessory dwellings. We're seeing at least one a meeting. So I was proposing that we consider looking at changes to the bylaw to make this an as of right. The province does promote affordable housing as one of its considerations in making planning decisions. And as property becomes more and more expensive and out of reach for many people, and with an aging population, a great many people are wishing to construct either a suite for in-laws or sometimes children, adult children. And also we receive a lot of queries from people who might have an existing cottage and would like to build a year-round home, but don't want to have to demolish a perfectly good cottage and would like to keep it. And those are some of the reasons that we've seen come before this committee for additional dwellings. So did you want me to go through these one by one, Mr. Chair, committee? Or do we want to just discuss them?
Depends on the committee, what they want. What do you want to do? You want to go one by one or just, okay, I see a yes there. And I have one question before we proceed. Is that all in the same bylaw, the dwellings and the containers? I thought that was separate bylaws for that, especially the containers. I thought we had discussed that apart.
Well, we discussed it as housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw. So they're all from different sections of our zoning bylaw, but I've encapsulated them in one bylaw amendment just for the sake of considering them. So
are we going to vote on each amendment?
No, what we'll do is we'll vote on the bylaw, and if we want to vote on it and defer certain sections, or we want to recommend certain sections, it's entirely up to this committee. This is what's being proposed, but it's certainly not. This committee certainly had ability to change it. This is where we do that based on the feedback we get.
It would be less confusing to have the containers on one subject or one part, and then the dwellings on the other, because they're two major issues, I think, and it's going to be mixed up.
Well, we can, when it comes to council, I can split the bylaws up if it would make more. But for tonight, can we discuss it? Can we discuss them in this format, and then I can split the bylaws up if they're recommended to council?
Yeah, okay, if you want to do it that way, because it's going to be in and out of each bylaw. Anyways, Mr. Fisher, do you have a question?
No, I was just going to recommend that we do split them up because I have different feelings about different sections. So, some I'll say yes, some I have different feelings.
Okay, so for the purpose of this, so for the purpose of tonight, we'll discuss each proposed amendment, but my direction is when I bring them to council, you'd like me to bring them as separate amendments. Is that correct?
Yes, sort of. I would have liked to discuss them separately tonight.
Well, we are going to discuss them separately.
Okay.
I'll just deal with it section by section, and that way we'll only talk about one thing, and I'll take the comments, and then we'll move to the next one.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So the first, go ahead. I think Mr. Roberge had a question.
Mr. Roberge, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. One thing I think there's, first of all, I would like to thank Melanie for all the work she put in preparing the report I requested back in September on the STA issue. And I believe the STA issue and the supplementary building both relate to one another. So I think we will have to deal with them more or less together because one implies on the other. So that's why I wanted to clarify. The way I see it is from the written letters that we receive and the comments of certain person, I think they're both tied together, and we have to address both on a package. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so what I'm seeing is the committee is partial to discussing both the issues on separate issues.
So,
Mr. LaBelle, so I think we'll proceed in that manner.
No
okay,
problem.
So I'm just going to clarify, we don't want to discuss accessory dwellings tonight. We want to put that to another meeting and move on with the other proposed amendments. Is that what I'm hearing, or?
No, we can discuss it, but we'll do one
Okay.
section, then we'll do the other one,
Okay, well, let's,
if time permits.
okay, let's, with your permission, Mr. Chair, can we move to some of the more mundane sections first and maybe get those out of the way, and that way we'll go back to do the heavy lifting.
We'll follow your lead, Melanie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the amendments that was being requested that we've had come up again and again is with regard to storage containers. Storage containers are, as everybody knows, they're affordable, they're secure, and we receive an awful lot of requests for people, particularly in the Shoreline residential zone, to have storage containers. They are permitted in the rural residential, and the agricultural zones already, but currently are not permitted in the Shoreline residential zone. So this proposed amendment is requesting that they be allowed in the SR zone as well as those rural zones. Of course, the subject to the maximum lot coverages, setbacks, the same as any garage or shed would be required. They would be treated in the exact same fashion as an accessory structure. So in a Shoreline residential zone, you can't have a shed in the front yard, which is the water yard. You wouldn't be able to have the storage container there either. So they would be subject to all of the same rules and regulations as would any shed or garage or other accessory structure. So that's one of the amendments that I was requesting or suggesting, pardon me. And we can open for discussion.
Okay, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just for clarification, if I say I'm on a small lake and I am looking across my lake, if we're allowing storage containers, I should not be able to see it on a property that, like, it shouldn't break my view. Is that a correct assumption? Like, these things are either well back or behind the house, and I'm not looking across the lake at a storage container. Is that fair to say, Melanie?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Waterfront property has an 18-meter front or 60-foot setback requirement. And currently no accessory structures other than boathouses, marine storage, and gazebos are allowed in the water yard of a Shoreline residential property. So these would be the same as sheds, side or back.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Joanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we were talking about these containers, the areas that is already allowed and expanding on the usage, right now where we stand, it's not permissible in the C1 or C2 zone. So we would be looking at allowing this for C1 and C2, meaning that, look.
No, we were only looking at expanding too, but it's certainly this committee, if they want to go there, it's entirely possible. We can go expand to the C zones. I was only looking at SR, but I'm open to suggestions.
Okay, but when I'm looking at the proposed amendment 4.2.11, it says that it's not permissible in R1, R2, R3, R4, and then C1, C2. But then I brought up at the other meeting that we have these sea can containers that are being used by many businesses. And they have been for as long as I can remember, some for more than 20 years. And even the municipalities using one of those containers at one of our fire stations. No, but I mean,
I'm teasing.
I propose that here again, as long as there's proper rules in place, that it doesn't hinder on the appearance or on the actual property maintenance. If you drive around town here in Sturgeon, there's probably at least 20 that if one takes the time to look, the location of where they're at is not an eyesore. And I think that should also be incorporated in the proposed amendment with specific rules of where they should be.
Okay, so that's a good point. I guess we'll note that, Melanie.
I have noted that, so what I'll do is amend that section to, so basically now the only zones where you wouldn't be permitted to have one of these is in R1 to R4.
So far,
So far.
because we still have shoreline residential to
Well, we have,
discuss.
yes, well, but you would, I think that what the mayor was indicating was that she'd like to see the expansion to, so right now it would be residential zones plus the commercial. She's looking to have the commercial also allow them.
Yes, okay, certainly. Mr. Fisher.
So I guess a point of concern, and I don't know where to go with this, but so we're talking about this section, and we're still talking about storage containers, but within that language, there is also truck, bus, coach, transport truck trailer, street car body, railway car body. And then what we're really talking about here, I take it, is like in general, we've been sort of talking about railway shipping containers. And I'm more than fine with that, but I would be concerned about throwing, because in rural residential areas, we have quite a few parked up school buses that are used for. I'm just a bit worried about the whole size of the cash-all that we're putting there. I've got no problem with shipping containers well tucked away, but I'm not so sure about all the other stuff. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Melanie.
Chair, that language is already in the bylaw. And it says you can't use these things, which as Mr. Fisher, by the reverse logic, you can in the other zones. So currently you can use these. It says you can't use them for an accessory structure. So if the committee wants to look at further prohibitions, we can. But right now, the rural zones allow these things.
Mr. Fisher, go ahead.
Right, through you, Mr. Chair, just to expand on that. So my thinking is I'd be prepared to give a little bit on the shoreline residential and say you can use those shipping containers, but I wouldn't want to say, okay, and you can park up your old school buses and transport truck trailers and streetcar body. And I wouldn't want that to be as open.
So you want the shipping containers very clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, and I mean, it's up to the rest of the committee, but I would certainly like to see some kind of, we're trying to meet a specific need, and not necessarily open that up so you can, turn your shoreline residence into a scrapyard. Sorry to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Abels?
Yes, Mr. Chair. On the shoreline residential, one thing I would like to suggest is although there's a percentage that's allowed for containers, since they're just to be used for additional storage or residential purposes, that there be a limit on it, that it should not exceed a certain length, and that might alleviate some of the concern, because I believe you can have these from 18 feet long to about 45 feet long. And I think once you get in that length, it's it's kind of huge. So maybe staff could look at it after this, looking at different position when they make their recommendation to council. Maybe it suggests a length of the sea container for the shoreline recreational area. I fully support the mayor's comment about the commercial. I think it's a good place to have them, and I fully support both commercial designation to also have with no limit. The limit would be only on the shoreline residential. Thank you.
And to expand on what Mr. Roberge is saying, there already is a limit on numbers of accessory structures on a property anyways, so you couldn't get 10 of them. You're only allowed a maximum of, I think, 3 accessory structures on any property anywhere.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Roberge. Any other comments? I'd just like to comment then, my comment is that I'm not in favor of shoreline residential. I think it's a sore eye for the huge properties on the side of the lake. We can have those anywhere else, I don't mind, but on the shoreline, if you have there's big expensive homes, and you don't want your neighbors to have sea cans lying around. That I don't blame them. They're paying the high taxes. I think they should be banned from that area, unless I don't know why it's in there even. Is it because there is a big demand for that, or? So anyways, I'm just gonna, I'm just voicing my concerns, and I don't agree with it, but that's just my vote.
So,
Yvon, Mr. Jain?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think various comments here, and I would agree with them with Duane's what she's talked about with respect to commercial, and I also would agree with Chris Fisher. We have to, like you mentioned, Mr. Chair, that we have to respect our neighbor, and I think if we're going to allow shipping containers, and I think there should be one per lot in the shoreline property. I think there should be put in an area so that if it's not an eyesore, we should have regulations pertaining to that, whether it be fenced around some way or other to at least try to hide them in some way. But the one thing about shipping container, and I have one, and the reason why I have it, it's secured to the ground. And if there's ever a burst of weather, we practice to be within that shipping container to avoid any, hopefully, trees or whatever. Weather today is unpredictable. So we're using it as a safety precaution area, because a cottage there's nothing much to a cottage. So this is one of the reasons why we're using it. And it could be used for that purpose, and it could be used for storage. But and nevertheless, that's what we're using, the one we have. And it's in a way in the bush, hidden away. So, but anyway, it's just something to ponder. And I think when we're installing these containers, I don't care where you install them, they should be installed so that people, it's not an eyesore, and people, don't really notice them. And so this is just something I would like to see happen. And if we put criteria as to how to put into place as to avoid being an eyesore to others. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. But just to comment, it's going to be hard to regulate where they installed them. I mean, we can't tell them where to install them unless there's bylaws.
Not if we have rules and regulations.
Well, we're overwhelmed with rules and regulation for our bylaw officers as it is. Mr. Roberge.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I fully agree with Mr. Duane's statement. That's one thing I never thought about as a safety shelter in case of when we just heard on the latest news that maybe over 100 persons got their life terminated with a tornado in the state, and we could have issues like that around here. And these structures are built to very strong to address these things. So I think it's a nice feature, and I think we should consider that. Thank you, Mr. James, for bringing up something I never thought of, that being a shelter for safety purposes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Abel. Mr. Revita.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your point, I think, I can't remember who made the point about we wouldn't be able to regulate on how many we have and extract it. So if you build a shed and it's bigger than 10 by 10, you have to have a building permit. Is there any way that we could build in the bylaw where if you're going to put a sea container on your property that we're made aware of it? I know it may cause other, problems, but if one wants to build a shed in our municipality and it's over 10 by 10, you have to have a permit. So, and then you pay taxes. You pay a tax on it, okay? And so that would be a method of knowing where they're at, Mr. Chair. And then I'll just follow this up, Melanie.
All right, go ahead.
Then the whole issue of sea cans, I think that as far as security, as far as what Councillor Duhaime just said, and as far as Mr. Roberge said, and Councillor Fisher said, it makes sense as long as they're not parked in front of the shoreline. So the thing is if we have them in an area where, it's permitted, then it makes sense for the person as having. In regards to businesses, it is true that they're all over the municipality, but most of them are tucked that you can't even see them. And I guess I would agree that we'd open up. But tonight, I think we should put more emphasis towards the shoreline because it seems to be a bone of contention, and we should move forward on that one. So Melanie, you had your, sorry, Mr. Chair, but okay, thank you.
Okay, Melanie, you're.
I just wanted to respond to Mr. Revita's comment about if you're looking at licensing the storage containers, I think that is, we're getting into the same conversation as we had with regard to licensing trailers. And, you're looking at an administration, necessary or unnecessary. But currently, because they're a freestanding object that doesn't require any permits, they just go down the way they come. We don't issue building permits for them unless they're going to put a roof on it or, use it in some other fashion than just the way it comes. So I don't know whether at this point in time, because we have a lot of people if we say you have to license them in the shoreline residential zone, we would then have to start licensing them in all the rural zones and all the agriculture zones. That's a lot of shipping containers.
Thank you, Melanie. Any other comments? So, okay. Oh, sorry, Joanne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit more precision, shoreline residential. So when we are referring to shoreline residential, i.e. if I name some specific locations, I'd be curious to find out if they are zoned shoreline residential. If we go along Marlowa Road or Lac du Mille, where you have all these homes that are located in front of the lake, would that be shoreline residential? Okay.
Typically, anybody whose property abuts water and is of a residential size. We do have some like farms that touch water, which are not, but typically a residential lot that abuts a water course is zoned shoreline residential.
Okay. And the reason I bring that up, Mr. Chair, is because some areas are more condensed, where I'm saying more populated than other areas, where the shoreline residential lots could be categorized. It could be the equivalent of what an R1, an R2, or R3, R4. So if we're not going to be allowing the CCAN storage containers in R1 to R4, why would we be considering in allowing these storage containers in shoreline residential, which could be areas that are highly populated or highly populated with row houses or houses nearby. I would only recommend these storage containers for lots that are bigger than the average, where you don't see one residential home after another. It would have to be in an area where there's probably more open space and not having neighbors one beside the other. Because we do have a lot of shoreline residential areas in West Nipissing where it's highly condensed, and their lots could be identical to what we see here in several communities like R1, R2, R3, and R4. So my recommendation would be that we look at the lot size and that we look at the surroundings to see if it's similar to residential areas, and that those storage containers would only be permissible in areas where we see more space, more less homes one beside the other. And I don't know if that could be researched with a recommendation for it to come back to the committee for further consideration.
You're on mute, Mr. Chair. You're on mute, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Fisher had a question, so I'll go back to you, Melanie, after.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, just following up on what Madam Mayor said, because I do agree with that to a certain extent, and it's really underlying. It shows like one of the big problems we have in West Nipissing, because we have so many different types of property. So I have a shoreline residential property that's 30 acres. No one's going to care if I put 10 sea cans. No one on earth is going to mind. Whereas you can have a lot, say, on the lake that's, I don't know, 3/4 of an acre, and yeah, your neighbor's going to mind. So it is a problem. I'm not sure how we get around it. In general, I agree with the concept of allowing on shoreline residential, but I do understand that there are different properties have different requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Melanie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to, respond to what the mayor had indicated in terms of, we could set a minimum lot size. So you might own a lot in the shoreline residential zone, but because with the bylaw, we can't be subjective. We can't say of a residential, we have to pick a size and say, you can have it in the shoreline residential zone if you have 1 acre, if you have half an acre, or, something concrete that we can actually work with. So if we're going to do that, because I do agree, there are areas where the lots are very much undersized to begin with, and they're very tight. I can name you a couple of roads down in Caldwell Township and in Springer Township where they're as close together as they are in town. But those lots may not qualify anyways because they would be over the lot coverage requirements and wouldn't qualify anyhow. But if this committee wants to limit that to, shoreline residential lots having an area of X or whatever that is, that's how we would do that.
Thank you, Melanie. And I think my area over here, Avenue de Lac and all those roads, the structures are very close together. So I would agree with a minimum size lot. That would be a sort of a solution. Mr. Rabida.
Yes, I agree with what basically has been proposed, and it just isn't just consistent with what we're doing with the next item that we're going to be discussing. Like, in fact, if it's an accessory, I don't know what the term is.
Accessory dwelling.
Accessory building, it has to be within a lot that's 1 acre, and that there are certain requirements within the percentage of the lot. We can't take more than 15%. So the thing is that it would be completely in line to what we're doing anyways, and it would prevent from having sea cans pop up on a lot that's, I don't know, 20 by, not 20, but there's some lots down at 3 Mile Lake Road that are very narrow, and you wouldn't want to put one in there anyways, because you probably wouldn't have enough place, but somebody probably will try. So, no, I seem to, we're up the, we're in the right field here. Thank you.
So just to, go ahead. Before we open it up to the public, can I just quickly encapsulate what I've heard here?
Sure, go ahead.
So what I've heard here tonight is that mostly everyone is in favor, providing that they are in the rear yard and not in the front yard. They are on properties that are not undersized, so they would be on, say, 1 acre. I'm just going to pull that 4,000 square meters as a number. They would not want, and also we have people, I've heard that some members support including the commercial zones, C1 and C2 in the permitted areas. I think I heard that someone was considering a maximum length. What I can do with that is I can find out what an average storage container is, because they look to be mostly fairly standard, and perhaps we can limit the length of them to whatever that.
I think it's 40 feet.
40 feet, so we can set it to 40 feet, so we can limit that. So I think that's everything that I heard here.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Any other comments that we should put in there, Mr. Jain?
Mr. Chair, just to go back with what Melanie was saying, 40 feet is too long. I think 20 feet should be the maximum. That's what most of them are 20 feet.
I don't know.
Yeah,
okay.
I have. And that's
Well,
long.
So I think Melanie can look at the average size, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Mhm. Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Whoop.
Whoops, Mr. Abels, then
Okay.
Joanne,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
Chris.
Yeah, it's the same, basically same thing as what Mr. Jaime mentioned. They are usually 8 feet wide, and they start at 20 feet, and then you can have longer, but I think that's the basic startup measure, and that's why I said that earlier. Maybe we should put a limit on the length, and this way that would, the footprint would be a lot less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abels. Where was I? Joanne?
I was just going to suggest that maybe the footprint should vary according to the lot size. So when I hear that someone has like a 20, 30 acres, that the footprint could be longer, but if it's within if it's 1 acre up to a certain amount of acres, then the footprint is smaller.
I think that works. Mr. Fisher?
I just wanted to check that whether the committee agreed or not that on Shoreline residential, we shouldn't be talking about school buses, streetcar bodies, and that kind of stuff. We're just talking about shipping containers.
We're just talking shipping containers. School buses are standard size.
All right. Any other, Mr. Pedre?
Yeah, I figure if you're in line with the lot coverage, it shouldn't matter if the size of the lot or the size of the unit. It's the same thing as building a shed to me. So if the neighbor doesn't like it, they can plant trees.
It's a percentage of the lot.
That's it. It's not too complicated.
Yeah. Any other comments, Mr. Jain?
Just one more question is to you, to Melanie. Melanie, are the lot size becoming bigger now? Are they required to have a longer or bigger lot size now?
Well, yes, right now our minimum lot size in the Shoreline residential zone is 1 hectare, which is 2.47 acres. We do periodically go down as low, but 1 acre is the absolute low end that we're allowed to create.
Okay, so in the new subdivision in town here, if at the end on Canal Road, they're what are they?
Well, it depends. 1 acre is the absolute minimum for no services. Half an acre is the absolute minimum for partial services, meaning water, or sewer. And then, of course, your town lots can go down quite a bit smaller because there's on municipal services.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Problem. Okay, are we done with comments? We'll go to the public now and see if there's any other comments or questions. I don't have them. Who's online there, Melanie, you know? Or?
I guess if there's anyone online, perhaps if you could just state your name and your number if you had any questions of the committee with regard to this subject matter.
Hello, it's Howie Longfellow. I'm the president of the Clear Lake Cottages Association. I'm at 117 South Shore Road, Field, Ontario. My phone number is 705-758-1205. Our membership has had concerns regarding storage containers around our lake's properties. So I'm here to sort of represent those concerns, which we did submit in writing, which I see on your agenda. I like hearing limiting container sizes compared to the property sizes. That is something that I think would go well with our membership. But the minimum size of the lots, is that what I'm hearing? Is that it's around an acre? Is that what I've heard?
That's for new lot creation, and that's the absolute minimum. The recommended is 1 hectare. We do go as low as, like I said, 1 acre if they can provide technical studies to prove that it can substantiate, but the bylaw says 1 hectare for new lot creation. We're aware that there's lots out there that are already created, which are less than that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that I think that size limit is reasonable for that kind of thing. I think that the comment regarding just planting trees to hide it isn't really acceptable, leaving that for neighbors to have to deal with this kind of thing. I think that the municipality is here to protect landowners. By nature, these lots are small already. It's not favorable to our membership having storage containers put up throughout these shoreline properties. Comment regarding just planting trees to hide it isn't really acceptable.
I muted them.
Mr. Longfellow, you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Oh, are you done with your comments? I'm just
yes.
sure if somebody else is on the line here. Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Longfellow. Is there anyone else online that wants to speak on the issue of storage containers?
Hi, this is Kathleen Sean.
Yes.
At 295C Fort Road, Sturgeon Falls. Phone number 705-493-4847. The only thing I would say is that where there are limits to the number of accessory buildings permitted on shoreline residential properties, will there be a limit of 1 container, or if the limit is 3, can they have a house and 3 storage containers?
That is entirely, through Mr. Chair, that is entirely if this committee wants to limit numbers to 1 storage container for shoreline residential. That is entirely within this committee's wish, but ordinarily you're allowed 3 accessory structures. So in theory, if you wanted 3 storage containers in a house, yes, the answer would be yes.
And I agree with most of the committee where a minimum lot size for those would solve a lot of the problems, especially with the grossly undersized lots that already exist. So that to me is fine, but I to have 3 of them or to have multiples on 1 shoreline residential property then does really become an eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Rachon. And I think with the minimum lot size, I don't think you could fit in 3. I'm not sure if we would allow 3. I'm assuming it would be only 1 per minimum lot size. I don't know what we want to do with that. Is 1 going to be our, or is it depending on the lot size we had talked about, right? Is that okay?
Well, typically, as through you, Mr. Chair, as I just stated, ordinarily, if we're treating it as an accessory structure and you're allowed 3 and you have the lot coverage, in theory, you could have 3, unless this committee wants to say 1 or 2 or whatever that number is.
No, I think the committee agrees with the lot size measure.
Can I get
Mr.
direction on what that minimum lot size is?
Well, that would be up to us. I don't know. I think 1 acre for 3 lots is pretty small. For 3 accessories is small, but in my opinion, Mr. Fisher.
I do just want to point out, because I know there are a couple of them in the municipality and I've looked at them, because storage containers there is a use for them where you put one storage container and then you have like an arched roof of like a Quonset hut, and that actually goes to a second storage container. And what you have is 2 storage containers in a massive barn type structure in the middle. And I know those exist here and I've looked at them myself. So I would definitely say and agree with, very limited number on a smaller lot. But when you get to bigger lots, I don't think we should be tying people's hands together. Thank you.
The kind you're mentioning, Mr. Fisher, require a building permit.
Okay.
There's what, Madam Clerk?
I was just saying the ones that he's referring to with the roof over, those require a building permit and they're an engineered structure.
So, Mr. Robert.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Well, from the discussion so far, I would support only one on the 1 acre lot or no existing lot. But if you have, like was mentioned earlier, there's a person that has a 30-acre waterfront lot, well, then I guess you could put 3 and nobody would know the difference. So anything over 1 hectare, I'd say it would be 3, like other accessory, consider the same as any other accessory building. But on a regular lot of 1 acre, between 1 acre and 1 hectare, I would say only 1.
Joanne.
I completely endorse the recommendation of board member Nutmeg pertaining to restrictions of 1 between 1 acre and 1 hectare. That the accessory structure as a CCAM would be limited to strictly 1.
And we're at 0 for less than an acre, correct?
That's
Right.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with that.
Okay. Are we?
Anybody else online that needs to speak on the subject? No?
So I think I got my marching orders on the storage containers.
Sounds good, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So quickly, while we're still on the subject of containers, in our existing bylaw, we do have a prohibition against galvanized steel containers. I can't recall how that came to be, but in any event, we do have a prohibition against galvanized steel structures in the R1 to R1 and including the shoreline residential. So what is being proposed here, again, with the shoreline residential, to allow galvanized steel as a color, so they don't have to paint it.
Hello.
Hello, who's on the line?
I've muted someone on the line. Sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but if your mic is not muted, there's feedback and we can hear the YouTube in the background.
Yeah. So
Okay, Mr. Fisher.
So I believe that person wishes to speak. They just need to stop their YouTube before I think that's what's going on.
Is that correct?
Did you?
You're gonna have to unmute him, Melanie.
I did.
Sorry. But no, it's 472. I think you've got Howie on. No?
Nope.
Howie's not on mute. It's someone else.
758?
Yeah, it's at 2599.
No, that's the other one.
I've asked them to unmute, but perhaps they don't want to say something.
Okay. Okay,
So
so
back to the galvanized steel containers. So what I'm proposing is strictly remove shoreline residential from the areas. They still would be prohibited in town, but remove shoreline residential from that prohibition against. So we're talking about those, what Mr. Fisher was talking about, you know, those galvanized, those Quonset hut type structures that they come in kind of an aluminum type color. We've seen at the Committee of Adjustment, and the chair over there will verify, we've approved quite a few of them in the last year or so, where that's the standard color they come in, and people are, you know, receiving minor variances to put that color, because right now they can't have that in the shoreline residential zone. So my proposal is to just remove the SR zone from that prohibition. Still can't have them in town, but, or we can take them out altogether, but that's for this committee to determine.
So any comments on that one, Mr. Jaime?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, Melanie, with respect to the galvanized containers, are you talking about the ones that you buy as a package and you build it as like a
Quonset hut?
Yeah, and you buy it as a package and you put it together and it's a round.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, or the color, because sometimes people they buy storage garages, and they kind of come in that aluminum type color.
Yeah.
And there's an additional cost for them to be a different color. So I know that
Okay. I have no problem with them, but anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we knew. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jaime. Any other comments on the galvanized? No? Mr. Fisher. Mr. Fisher.
So I'm just sorry, because these things can be quite small to quite massive, and these are accessory. So and we're just talking shoreline residential. So I would want very similar, if not stricter, rules to apply that we just did on the storage containers. Like, you don't get it unless you're sort of if you're on a small property. You know, it's like anything. You can set one up and have it look nice, or you can set one up and really annoy your neighbors, I guess. So I would want to sort of have the same similar restrictions. I certainly wouldn't disallow them, but I would want some similar restrictions to what we just hashed out for the storage containers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Mr. Pedre?
Yes, I don't understand the difference between that type of a garage compared to if you build a garage.
I'm just talking.
If you paint your garage aluminum paint, is that going to be, is that allowed?
Technically, in our shoreline residential 1 to 4, you can't have galvanized steel color.
Yes, I know.
So what this proposal is to just remove shoreline residential from that prohibition. And we're not talking about any specific type of garage. We're just talking about garages that color in general.
Joanne?
So are we looking to remove this from our official plan?
No, we're looking just to allow them in the shoreline residential zone.
Okay, so it would be an addition.
Well, no, currently they're prohibited in the SR zone. So people in the SR zone could build an aluminum garage if they wanted to.
Okay, so what we're saying right now, they cannot,
That's correct.
but we're looking at we're looking at the option that they can.
That's correct.
Okay.
Again, all the same rules of all accessory structures, setbacks, lot coverages. They're just, we're talking about color here more than anything.
That's a weird concept. Just
Yeah,
It is.
color. I don't know. It's doesn't sound
Mr.
right.
Chair, Mr. Chair, I have
Yes.
no problem with the actual color. I mean, if it's allowed right now, other than the actual just stainless steel, they can do it in any color right now. So if they would prefer to have just galvanized steel versus colored, I mean, I don't have an issue with that.
Thank you for your comment. But whatever. So why wouldn't we allow that on R1, R2, and R3 and R4 then? What's the point?
At the time of the, and I recall, when the bylaw was formulated in 2014, the committee of the day, there was a lengthy discussion about this, and it was one of the things that the committee of the day didn't want to see, didn't want galvanized steel in town or on the shoreline residentials. But I'm open to it because we get tons of requests.
Mr. Fisher.
So I'm just wondering, because when my house burned down, I had my garage, quite a large garage, and I had a new roof put on it. And I have to say that for that first year, I was blinded when the sun shone on it. That I think that might have been the original thing. It's fine once you've had a year of weathering, but initially I was blind. So perhaps that's why originally was there. But anyway, I have no issue with it as long as the rules are similar to the sea containers. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lavelle.
Yes, Mr. Chair. If I remember correctly, I guess you see galvanized steel is usually very popular in the farming area. All of their buildings are kind of covered with that. And I guess at the time, people felt that the standard in town should be a bit higher, and you should have colored steel and not just galvanized steel. And again, if my recollection and memory is good, but I think we should permit it and control at that point on to have shoreline residential have to submit to that. I don't see it. And usually people then find out the same as was mentioned. It's very bright in the sunlight. So first thing you know, they buy a gallon of paint and they paint it the same color as the house anyway. So I think we should permit it, remove it from the not to be done issue.
Thank you, Mr. Lavelle. And my point is, if we're going to remove it for shoreline residential, why don't we remove it for everybody? This is an old law that's obsolete. Or is there a problem with is there a demand, Melanie, for a residential?
Yes.
So why don't we remove the whole thing?
From what I gather, the enamel paint that they have to put on steel raises the price. It's a little more expensive.
Well, has nothing to do with the bylaw, right?
No, but that's the reason why people would request the galvanized steel, because it's a little less expensive out of pocket at the front end.
So could we look at
I have no issues. If the direction here is to take it out and allow them everywhere, I'm fine.
Any other comments with that?
Looks like there's consensus there.
I don't know. Is there any, is everybody pretty well on board with that, or remove it for everybody? Okay. You have
okay, marching orders there. I'm gonna whip back to storage containers for very brief minute. Just a question as to whether or not we can include storage containers in the temporary uses portion of the bylaw, so that when people are building in town, they may use a storage container to store building materials in for the duration of a building permit.
Mr. Lavelle and then Mr. Fisher.
I have no problem with that. I think right now it is an approved use that if you have a building permit, there's no problem using, this type of structure to house your material. Larger contractor usually have very well the same thing, but on wheels, they bring it in and out. But hey, as long as there's a building permit and you want to store all your material on site, I have no problem with it. There was some people mentioned, what about regular maintenance? Then if you don't if your project does not require a building permit, then I think it's a no, it's not approved. But if you have a building permit, it's part of the construction trade, and I have no problem with it.
Thank you, Mr. Roberge. Who was next? Mr.
I-
Fisher,
I-
I think.
Mr. Roberge covered everything that I want to say. It makes good sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ravida.
Totally agree. In fact, what's happened is with this, our real estate right now being so buoyant and people having to move fast, some people use these even to store their furniture because they can't get into the new dwelling. And it has nothing to do with building material. It's their furniture that they don't want to move 3 or 4 times. So they put it in one of these containers while the house is being built. And I totally agree with Mr. Roberge in his statement stating that, you know, as long as there's a building permit, then hey, go for it, knock yourself out. So yeah, thank you. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Ravida. Joanne?
Just a few questions on that subject matter. Is there any restrictions of where this container can be located? Can it be an obstruction, you know, as far as safety issues for other neighbors that are backing up from their yard and so on?
It would, typically it would have to be located wholly on the lot of the person building. I'd say they usually put them in the front yard because if they put them in the back, then they wouldn't be able to get them out once the house was built. So they typically put them in the front yard during construction, but we could certainly, you know, set a minimum setback. They would be the same as any other accessory structure.
Supplemental?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there has to be setback because when we're looking at residential area with the footprint of houses being so nearby and locations of driveways. And as far as building permits are concerned, is there an opportunity as well to issue restriction on allowable timeframes, which would be subject to renewal? So if we do get complaints from neighbors that the container is being used for a maximum duration of, and anything over that duration, they would need to come back to the building department to get a renewal.
Through Mr. Chair, the way it's worded is that it's for the duration of the open permit. And in no case, no more than 1 year unless the permit's renewed.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so
Yes.
so an individual can have a container for storage due to a building permit up to 1 year.
Or the duration of their permit. Sometimes they periodically, we have building permits that go over, but not very often.
Okay. Well, my biggest concern right now is the safety for pedestrians, safety for the neighbors and the circulation, and mostly in the winter months. So I think as long as there's guidelines to ensure that it doesn't impede on the safety of neighbors and traffic.
And that's also covered in property standards in terms of sight lines and whatnot. So, you know, we move it so your neighbors can get out of their driveway sort of thing. So that's covered off in other bylaws as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what would be the specific setback when we were talking, when making reference to the setback for these containers? What if someone doesn't have the lot size to accommodate this in their front yard?
The typical front yard setback in town is 20 feet.
Okay,
That's the typical front yard. No, that's the setback for the house. That's the setback from the property line is 20 feet. So the containers would typically be within that 20-foot setback or in whatever's the driveway area. We haven't had any, often as was mentioned, that we often have people who have those trailers, construction trailers. And to my knowledge, we haven't had any complaints or concerns raised, people using them. Let's hope that whoever's using a container for storage would be as respectful.
okay.
Okay, so any other comments, or is there anybody online that wishes to comment at this point? Doesn't seem
It's Howie
so.
Longfellow again.
Yes.
I did get a message from the person that was lost. They did try to dial in. I'm not sure if there's any provision to allow them to speak once they're able to join this meeting again, but I do just want to let you know that there was somebody that did want to speak earlier that had some technical difficulties. I think they're going to try and dial back in.
They try to dial back in, just have them just speak up and we'll let
Sure.
them address the committee.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Longfellow. So I
All
think I
right,
got
so-
my marching orders on that. Let's see what else I had. There was a couple of other things, but they were just housekeeping from previous bylaws where there was oversights made. I think that pretty much covered up, aside from the discussion about the, there was one other thing was moving. I'm proposing increasing this minimum setback for accessory structures in the RU A1 and A2 zones, RU A1 and A2 zones. Currently, they're the same as in town, 1.2 meters, which I feel is a bit tight. If you have, as Mr. Fisher indicated, if you've got 30 acres, I don't think it's necessary to build your shed 4 feet from the lot line. You've got lots of space. So what I'm looking at is proposing increasing that to 4.5 meters for those zones, which gives a little bit more flexibility.
Comments on that one? Mr. John?
You know, I have a problem. I don't mind 2 meters or 3, the max. But then, you know, I'd sooner, if anything, I'd sooner like to see whatever you have, the container, closer, like maybe 8 feet to the line as opposed to 12 or 13, because then the view of the container will be a problem again. And, you know, I think like in town, we're allowed far less, but I think in the rural area, anything within 10 to 12 feet should be the maximum.
So you're thinking 3 meters as opposed to 4.5, Mr. Duhey?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I can support that.
Okay.
Mr. Fisher, do you have any comment or question?
I just think, I mean, I can agree either way, but I think the point being that if you have an RR rural residential and you have, you know, so again, I have 160 acre rural residential property, and there are people that have a 1 acre rural residential property, and maybe the rules are not the same. But I mean, I'm fine with that. Or if it's over a certain size, then certainly, you know, I have no business building something under 4.5 meters next to my neighbor's property. I can perfectly understand that. But again, it's different depending on lot size. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I think
We agreed on 3.
I think that the mayor had something to say.
Joanne?
Well, I do agree with 3 because of the fact that the more property that you own, the owner may decide what they want to do in the future with that property, if they want to sever lots or whatever, when you're in rural residential. So, I mean, the larger that, the more restrictive that we are, we may eliminate the opportunity for future development.
Well, 3 meters?
So
3 meters?
I would go with 3 meters, and the reasoning behind that is because I don't want to be landlocking someone with future development.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ravito.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Melody, I've got a real dumb question here. So Councillor Fisher says he has 180 acres.
Mm-hmm.
That means that he could put a building 3 meters or a C-can 3 meters from the end of his property?
Yes. Well, not your, That's the rear yard. So yes, he could put it 3 meters from any of his lot lines except for the water yard.
Holy moly, that's kind of dumb. Well, no, never mind. But it's just
But,
that,
but right now it's 1.2 meters.
and so we're extending it to 3 meters.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Okay. But I just kind of funny when you think about it. You're talking about severing property and all that. If Councillor Fisher decides to put it way at the end of his property, 3 meters from his line, it's still okay. No, okay. I just find it comical.
Mr. Robert?
Yes, Mr. Yeah, I would agree with 3 meters because referring to what Mr. Savage just mentioned, in certain cases, there's other structure and, you know, if you waste land on boundaries that are not going to be used, I think 3 meters the maximum. I would, I would support that, depending on the personal use or an intended use of the property owner. I think to make it more restrictive than 3 meters is too much, even if it's on a rural area, because quite often there's other structure that or natural impeachment, rocks or whatever, a well, field bed. So I think you have to take so you have to consider no, otherwise they would have to go and stick the building way farther away. So 3 meters, I think, is maximum I would be comfortable with.
Thank you, Mr. Robert.
I think pretty much everybody's good with the 3 meters on that. I think the gentleman that Mr. Longfellow had referred to is back on the line, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Hello?
Anybody home? Hello?
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 Yes. Who's this?
This is Bob Jolly. Is this the chairman?
Hello, Mr.
Yes.
Jolly.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Jolly. Do you wish to speak?
I at this point, yes, I just wanted to say that I'm from Clear Lake as well, and I was very distressed when I saw the suggestion that they allow the sea cans onto the properties, because I think the majority of the people in our area would not be supportive of this. But I see that council now has had some good ideas, specifically Mr. Fisher. I agree with there should be strong restrictions on where these can be viewed from, and I don't think it's going far enough to say that just from the neighbors. I think these things have the potential of ruining the view from the lake for all of the people on the lake if they're positioned, even if they're 9 feet away from a property line, if they're adjacent to the lake, it's going to ruin everything for the rest of the neighbors, and I think that's something council should be concerned about.
Well, I think, as I indicated before, Mr. Jolly, I don't know if maybe you didn't hear that correct. They wouldn't be allowed in the front yard. So in the space between the water and the dwelling, they wouldn't be allowed in that water yard anyways.
Yeah, well, of course, the front yard of a cottage is not necessarily, you can still see through the side of a cottage right back to the road from the lake, right? So even if you put this behind the cottage, if it's still one side of the cottage and in clear view, it's still going to be something that most people would not be supportive of. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, Mr. Jolly, I understand, and I think Mr. Longfellow said that he would talk to his members about this, so he seemed to be in agreement, but maybe you can discuss that with Mr. Longfellow. But the bylaw is still in process, so you still have chances to comment on it.
Okay.
We're just hashing out the details here, but it'll come back to council.
Okay, that's very good then. I thank you very much. I did miss some when the the computer here wasn't working. I wasn't able to speak through it, so I finally got on the phone. So I thank you for putting up with me getting through finally, and I'm glad that I managed to get a hold of you. Thank you.
No problem, Mr. Jolly. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Jolly.
Mr. Abel first.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've heard and I've seen in a few written comments, and some people think they have a given right of view over properties, and that does not exist legally, as far as I know. And that was told to me by a judge at the court hearing. There's only 2 properties in Ontario that have a right of sight, and these are 2 hotels in Niagara Falls that purchased the right from the province for a huge sum of money, so nobody could build or block their view of the falls for their guests. So to assume that when you do some improvement on your property, that you have to satisfy everybody's desire on how it should look and what color it should be painted, I don't think it's, that we can get involved in that situation. I think we're being very reasonable in allowing it in the backyard, but there's nobody that has the absolute right of view across somebody's property in between the house and the shed and the trees and the side yard. I just wanted to clarify that because there's appear to be a certain amount of people out there that think they have the right to control everything, and I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Abel. We're trying to accommodate everybody, so it's hard.
That's right.
Melanie, are we good to carry on?
I think so. And aside from the accessory dwellings, which I believe the committee's indicated they want to discuss as a package along with the short-term rental accommodations proposed, my report that I included in your package, and we're getting to close to the end of our time. Do we want to bring that back to the next meeting and continue this conversation?
Sure.
And I do apologize to those who are on the line that wanted to address that tonight, but I think as one of the couple of members have indicated that they'd like to discuss that as a standalone issue. About all the other noise.
There'll be less confusion, and next time we'll have more time, and that's fine. We're discussing everything. That's good.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Joanne.
Okay, I totally agree. But when we make reference to short-term rental accommodation, this does include Airbnb, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to make sure that those that are either on the call or interested in being part of this discussion, they still have the opportunity to do so at a later date. Thank you.
And the correspondence that was included in your package for this meeting, as well as the report on short-term rentals, will come back in the next agenda as well.
Thank you.
So we want to adjourn this meeting for tonight, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I would like that. I need a mover and a seconder, Mr. Jaime and Mr. Ravida.
It is moved by Yvonne Jaime and seconded by Dan Ravida. Be it resolved that the West Nipissing Planning Advisory Committee meeting of December the 13th, 2021 be adjourned to January 10th, 2022.
All in favor? All in favor? Okay.
Adjourn.
Carry.
Okay, so everybody just put yourselves on mute and we'll reconvene. Those who are on the other committee will reconvene in about 7 minutes.
I'd like to wish Merry Christmas to everybody on the board. Have a good one and safe Christmas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good job tonight.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, and thank you to all board members.
Thank you. Good holidays.
Okay, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Anyone on the line who is here for the Committee of Adjustment meeting, the next meeting, it'll begin in about 5 minutes if you just bear with us. Put yourself on mute. We will be coming to Committee of Adjustment at 7:30.
Okay, thank you.
Allô?
Allô?
Bonjour, y a-t-il quelqu'un qui me voit?
Oui, je te vois, Roger, puis je t'entends.
Moi, je peux pas voir personne.
On se cache peut-être de toi, c'est un complot.
Ça doit, hein?
Oui. C'est parce on vient juste de finir l'autre meeting, puis
Ben, ils sont tous partis, hein?
ouais. C'est vrai que tu t'en viens.
Ben oui.
Regarde, tout de
Bon,
suite, là.
là, je te vois. Moi, je suis pas bon là-dedans.
Tu es content, là?
Oui, je te vois en fraise.
Oui.
Bonjour, Monsieur Roger.
Comment ça va, madame?
Ça va bien?
Good.
Ça va très bien. On est proche de finir l'année.
Oui, that's right.
Je suis en vacances la semaine prochaine. C'est bon?
Toi?
Wait,
Nice.
Good.
wait,
T'en vas-tu pour un mois?
a month. I know. Une semaine.
Une semaine. There you go.
Oui, oui.
You wish it
That
was a
way.
month.
Tu t'en vas-tu t'en vas-tu d'où ce qui fait chaud?
Out there? Outside?
Like somewhere warm?
I know.
Ah,
I know.
tu restes alentour.
Je reste chez nous.
Ah,
On va faire des galettes et des autres choses pour le Noël.
ouais, you're good at that.
Oui. Oui.
You missed that this year, eh?
C'est juste pour les préparations de Noël.
Ah, okay.
Okay,
Then
so
that-
I think we are waiting on our chair. We should be returning any minute.
Will there be one next month?
Yes,
You already have,
already have applications. So
Applications.
unfortunately, guys, you just don't get any time off.
okay. I'll be in Florida, but I will do it from there.
Awesome. Look at that. You don't, we can,
This is a good thing now.
yes, it is.
I can leave.
But no bragging when you're
No,
you're
no,
there.
you
And if
won't.
you're
I
really
won't say a
sad,
word.
you have to keep your camera off.
I won't say a word.
Okay. I'm just gonna see where, I don't know, perhaps I might have locked out our chair. I'm just gonna go see.
No palm trees in the background there, Roger. In
No,
Canada.
no,
I
no.
don't want that.
I'll keep it simple.
Or margaritas.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, with that, you won't see anyways. They'll be beside the iPad.
Oh, we may know.
No, 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 no. Depends if it's on happy hour.
I thought these meetings always were happy hour.
Yeah, for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Okay, j'ai trouvé, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, sorry, I'm back.
Salut, Roger.
Bonjour. Ça va, Fern?
Ça marche, toi?
Oui, oui, oui.
Good.
Oh. Oh, take this off. Bon. Where's my agenda? This one here. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Hearing none, I'll go on to approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion on the floor?
Me, Roger. It is moved by Denise Senecal and seconded by Roger Gagnon. Be it resolved that the agenda for the West Nipissing Committee of Adjustment meeting of December the 13th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Everybody in favor as read?
Yep.
Carried. Next item is adoption of the minutes of November 15th meeting. Do we have a motion on the table?
Denise? Vern? It is moved by Denise Senecal and seconded by Fernand Pellerin. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting held on November the 15th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Everybody in favor as circulated? Carried. Okay, we'll do section 5, consent. Application C 73/21 by Michael Duffy and Carlos Brizuela.
I'll take them over in a second or for the motion, please. Roger, Dennis. It is moved by Roger Gagnon and seconded by Denise Senecal. that a consent application made by Carlos Brazula and Michael Duffy to create one new lot on Desjardins Street in Field, being part of Lot 14, Concession 5, Parts 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, and part of Part 3 on 36R14363 in the Township of Field. Through you, Mr. Chair, this property is part of the former site Field Lumber property. So when you go across the bridge in a Field, the store, right before the store is the entrance to the property, and there's actually a second entrance just past the store. So it's basically all that land that's behind the store along the river there. This property, obviously, as I indicated, is a what we consider a brownfield. It will require an environmental assessment before any residential uses or recreational uses could be commenced on it. The property was the subject of a part of a natural severance. Recently, the former owner split the property using the Pike Creek as a natural severance. So the part that we're dealing with here is the part that's closest to, I guess it would be the north section of the property, the part that's closest to the highway. And what is being proposed is to split it into two pieces, and each of which already has an entrance permit. And I believe that's about it. Obviously, I've indicated that it would require environmental assessment before they could do anything in terms of change of use. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Goodrich if he has any additional comments.
Well, the only additional comment would be simply that this allows the two partners to be able to split the land and each have ownership of a piece themselves. And then from there, whatever they wish to do with it. As Melanie has said, we do support the need for a record of site condition if there is going to be a sensitive land use such as residential or recreational use of the property.
Any question or comments from the members? Any question or comments?
Oh, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Fisher has.
Sorry, because I only see three of you at a time, so I have to keep flipping my screen back and forth.
Okay, so I'll just comment that, so I knew the previous owner of this particular property, and there is potential, there is some high ground there, it's not all floodplain. This particular piece is, I guess historically would be the front loading area of what was Field Lumber. The place, the bit that really where there is environmental concerns is actually the other side of Pike Creek. So what I'm telling you is I agree that we need the environmental, but I don't see that there'll be any problems with this severance at all, and I support it. Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, and then I was just going to add to Mr. Fisher's comments. That's why we did the natural severance with the Pike River. Whenever you do an environmental assessment, there's two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is just a documentary search, and it's a much less involved process and much cheaper. We know definitely the other side of Pike River will need a phase 2, which is soil testing and remediation and mitigation if there are some issues. So that was our historical research, such as it is to this date, would show that there was no real industrial uses on this side of the Pike River.
Yes, but Mr. On the notes from our planning department, they do say phase 1 and phase 2, not just a phase 1. So are we changing that recommendation to phase 1 only?
No, but perhaps I could make a suggestion. Just add the two words "if required" after phase 2.
Okay, and could I have Madame Mélanie's comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from my discussions with the Ministry of the Environment with regard to records of site condition, a severance or a natural severance does not change the requirements. So The property is historical. As Mr. Fisher was indicating, that front portion of the property was the loading and unloading. There were garages on that property with, trucks and fuel and things like that. So I disagree with Mr. Goodridge that this property will only require a phase 1 on that portion. I believe a phase 2 will also be required. I don't expect there'll be any real remediation required, but I do think that a phase 2. But for this committee, we don't need to, these only come into play if they want to build on the property or camp on the property or do something with the property that is, if they want to use it for, put a garage on it or something like that, that wouldn't require that. It's only when you get into more sensitive land uses, and that would trigger at the building permit stage.
Also, it would be at the building permit stage, and so it does not have any impact on our decision tonight.
No, it's just there for notation.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think we'll leave it as is since it's only a notation item. All right, Mr. Goodridge?
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Okay, anything else from the members, or if there's any audience, if they have any comments? And I'll flip my screen. Nobody's okay, so I'll call it to a vote. Everybody in favor as presented? Carried.
Okay.
And now we'll go on to C-7421. Gilles Marleau, please.
I need a mover and a seconder, please. Roger? Chris? It is moved by Roger Gagnon and seconded by Chris Fisher that a consent application made by Gilles Marleau for 2 lot additions on properties on Marleau Road in Sturgeon Falls, being part of Lot 3 Concession B, Parts 1 and 2, Plan 36R6941, and Part 1, Plan 36R10261 in the Township of Springer. Through you, Mr. Chair, what is being proposed here is you'll see that Mr. Marleau, he owns the back property in behind some lots that were created along Marleau Road. This is on the north side of Marleau Road, not on the water side. And what is being proposed here is to add severed 1 to his brother's home and severed 2 to his niece's home, and coming out of that back property.
So they're removing that from the existing farm.
Yeah, from the, well, there's 2 pieces to the farm. There's a lower piece, and then there's quite a much bigger piece behind that that's also owned by the farm.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or question from, oh, sorry, Mr. Goodrich, do you have anything to add?
No, other than just the fact that on the sketch, we show that the severed line, the north limit of the severed line is to coincide with the approximate location of the tree line so that we're not impacting on the farm.
Okay, thank you. Any question or comments from the members? I see none. Any question or comments from the audience?
Mr. Fisher.
No, I just got I have a quick question for you, Norm.
Yeah.
Because you said the word farm and you are our agricultural representative, so this didn't go through, this was not, just,
no, this property is zone rural, the north part of it. So it's not affected by the Ag Committee.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call it to a vote. Everybody in favor as presented? Carried. We'll go on to C-7521, Daniel Schwartzen, True Border, and
Leslie Bernard. I'll take a mover and a seconder, please. Chris. It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Denise Seneca that a consent application made by Dan Schwartzentruber and Leslie Bernard to create a new lot at 10725 Highway 17 in Verner, being part of Lot 6, Concession 4 in the Township of Caldwell. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is a what we call a farm consolidation. So what is taking place on this application is the fact that Mr. Schwartzentruber has purchased there's a house in the corner of this property. See where you can see the little square there? And the rest of the property is big farmland back here. Almost, it is a mile deep. It's 62 acres or has 62 hectares of property, which is lots and lots. So what's being proposed here is to simply remove the dwelling from the property so that the dwelling can be sold. The balance of the property will be consolidated with farm operations, existing farm operations of Mr. Schwartzentruber, and the rest of the property becomes what's called A2. It cannot have another dwelling built on it.
Okay, and for the information of the committee, this did go to the Ag Committee and did support that application because Mr. Schwarzenzuber is an active farmer and he meets all the requirement to have go through this process. Any question or comments from the members? Any question or comments from the audience? Hearing none, I'll call.
Well, hang on one sec. Hang on one second, please.
Yes.
I just wanted, sorry, I wanted no problem with everything that's being proposed. There is another field entrance on the property at the west side of the property. The MTO has asked for this to be a mutual right-of-way or a mutual entrance using the existing house entrance. And my partner has tried to contact the new planner at the MTO to question this, but we just haven't received a response yet. We don't think it's a viable request because Mr. Schwartzentruber would be bringing large, heavy farm equipment right in these people's driveways. And if they've got children playing in the yard, it's in the middle. The driveway is right next to their house and it goes up to the garage. So to use that as a common entrance point, even if they veer off before they get to the house, to me, it doesn't make sense from a safety standpoint. And Mr. Schwartzentruber already does have a farm entrance. I think maybe the MTO was concerned that we were going to build another house on the property, which is simply not the case.
So because there's an existing, because did MTO wanted to remove the west side farm entrance?
Well, I'm not sure. I think they were probably under the assumption that we were severing the house, but still keeping it as another entire lot where you could build another home on it. But with the A2 zone category, of course, that's precluded from happening. So I'm not sure why they've made the request or for a shared entrance.
Or maybe the person at MTO was not aware or did not understand the process that we're going through, the consolidation process. But definitely that farmers should be entitled to retain the west side entrance as a farm entrance, and so that the owner of the house has his own private entrance. Because to put combine and residential property together doesn't go too good.
No, that was our thought, but maybe Melanie's had some discussion with the MTO over and above what we've been able to.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I haven't, but what I was going to suggest that if Mr. Goodrich or his partner are able to get a hold of the MTO and explain to them what the deal is, and if I explain to the MTO that the retained lands will not have another house on it, will not have any dwellings, and if they're okay to remove that condition, then I will, with the permission of this committee, I will waive that condition without coming back to this committee if they can work it out with the MTO.
I fully support that approach. And
Okay,
all the members.
I think my partner Don just wanted to add something from his discussions.
Yeah,
okay.
The message was left. It's been 4 days. Still haven't gotten any response. I actually left another message again today. So we're trying to get to them, but it's a new planner, and Melanie's had her stuff with them too. So she's a little hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, so I asked permission of the committee, so if you guys get a hold of them and they call and confirm it with me, we'll just take it out.
Okay.
Okay.
And we're good with that. Thank you.
So all the members are okay with that. So I'll call it to a vote with that understanding that they will contact MTO to have the issue resolved. Everyone in favor? Carried. We'll go on to C7621 okay, that's a Bernard Amiot.
Mover and a seconder, please. Yes. It is moved by Fernand Pellerin, seconded by Chris Fisher, that a consent application made by Bernard Amiot to create 2 new lots on Levive Drive in Sturgeon Falls, part of Lot 4, Concession 3 in the Township of Springer. For you, Mr. Chair, this property is located, let's see where it's located. It's located at the corner of Highway 64 and Levive Drive. You'll see it's kind of an L-shaped property. What is being proposed is to sever 2 lots from that L-shaped property, each of which meets the frontage and lot area requirements for the zone. That's it. It's pretty easy.
Okay, before we go any further, I would ask maybe for my Mr. For Dennis to take over, because this property involves my granddaughter, and in case some people feel that I have a conflict of interest, I don't think I do, but in order to be sure that I don't cause any problem, I'll ask my the deputy chair to please take over this portion of the meeting.
You're on mute, Mr.
Monsieur
Deputy Chair.
Sénécal, je peux avoir votre assistance, Denis?
I'm on mute. Okay, I'm ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
So just to reiterate, there's, like I said, there's 2 lots meeting all of the required frontages, area, and everything. So no issues at all with this.
Any questions from the committee? Mr. Fisher.
So just because I know this is Noam's pet peeve, so I just want to know why those are such funny shapes. So you've got an L, you got another L, and then so why is it on? Why isn't lot 2 and 3 sort of just straight back and evenly distributed? Is there a reason for that, or
Well, what the L do you care? There actually is a good reason for that. The retained lands are going to Monsieur Amiot's nephew or grandnephew, as the case may be. He is going to actually retain the severed one. The severed 2 portion then is coming out of what he has retained, but he wants it to be as the minimum size that he has to create. And the rear portion behind that is still almost 54 meters, which is roughly, I don't know, 175 feet, somewhere in that range. So it is still a large piece of property at the rear. And it's an L shape now. We're just trying to preserve the nature and character of development in the area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or from the committee?
Other than to say, I thought I was going to get off easy when Norm recused himself.
We'll give him back the chair. You watch it. Okay, so I'll pass this to a vote. Everybody in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much, Dennis. And now we'll go on to C7721, 1395559 Ontario Incorporated.
Mover and a seconder, please. Chris, Roger. It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Raji Gagnon that a consent application made by 1395559 Ontario Inc. to create a new lot at 90 Bay Street, Sturgeon Falls, part of Lot 5, Concession A, Part 4, Plan 36R14514. Through you, Mr. Chair, we've been here before. This is the ASM property on Bay Street. And there was a consent application which was approved more than a year ago. Mr. Renault was required to, because this is an industrial property and he is moving to a more sensitive use, was required to get a record of site condition. And there was some delays at the engineering end, and they lost track of time with the severance and unfortunately went over the limit, the time limit for the severance. You'll all be grateful to know that the new provisions under the Planning Act are going to increase that 1 year to 2 year, which is going to be great. So Paul can go 1 year and 11 months before he goes out to the field.
And 3 weeks.
Yeah, but it's going to make it easier for people to, it's just hard to get a surveyor and everything done in that 1 year. So in this case, we don't have any choice. Mr. Renault had to come back to this committee to get his consent renewed because it did lapse.
So I guess since everything is the same and it's just a reconfirmation, I imagine that there's one
slight difference, and that this is weird. What happened when we initially circulated Greater Sudbury Utilities, they asked for an easement across the frontage of the property, which is standard with them. Mm-hmm. On the circulation this time, which of course we have to do again, they asked for an easement along Bay Street. They also asked for a 3-meter easement across the property for existing infrastructure that they have. So that is, unfortunately, as I don't have any flexibility with that. The Greater Sudbury Utilities has asked for this additional easement, and I included the documents in your package that show where they're asking for it.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, I can add one thing to that, or a couple of things to that. Once again, if we could add the simple 2 words, if required, at the end of it, because Don and I aren't convinced that where they show the aerial service line crossing the property actually crosses the severed lands. It may all be entirely contained within the retained land, and as such that second easement request would not be required. So if we simply add the words if required, and I'm sorry, just one sec, Melanie, just on the other one as well. When we did the original application, the request was we matched what Greater Sudbury Utilities had requested of the municipality, which was a 3-meter easement across the front. And that's what we created on the reference plan, for this property. And now they have come back and asked for a 4-meter wide easement, which will mean that we won't have a contiguous line of easement with the property to the west. So we've tried as well to contact Greater Sudbury Utilities to see if they would be willing to accept a 3-meter easement, so it's consistent with what they've received within the last year.
Right. Okay. I support that. So then would include the phrase as required.
That's correct. And like the last one, if with the committee's indulgence, if we can just obtain a clearance letter from Greater Sudbury Utilities on those issues, then Melanie wouldn't have to bring it back to this committee for a change of condition, if that's the feeling of the committee.
Well, personally, I have no problem with that as long as Melanie gets the proper confirming correspondence from Greater Sudbury that they agree to it. As long as, why have a meeting if they put it in writing that they agree to the request? So every member agree with that?
I think Mr.
position?
Fisher has a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
okay.
Sorry, I just have a general, I just want information here. So you mentioned that that's an overhead, that's like hydro poles in an overhead line going across that property. Like there's actual hydro poles there. I just trying to understand, because when I looked at it and I think about they want, the right of way, I assume that was a buried cable. Can you just explain to me why they would ask for that, and why they wouldn't be asking for that on more or less everything I see? Do you know what I mean? Like, why don't I see that on every single, there's got an electrical cable going to that property, I need that severance. Why am I seeing it here and not everywhere else? Does that make sense, that question?
It's a good question. We had the same question.
Okay, thank you.
Got questions on everyone that they comment on.
So any other question or comments? So I guess if we're before I call it to a vote, everybody realize that we'll be adding those two words as required, and then Melanie doesn't have to come back to the board if she gets all the approval in writing from Sudbury Hydro. That's okay? Okay, I'll call it to a vote. Everybody in favor as amended or proposed? Carried. We'll go on to C-79-21, 937-7816 Canada, Inc. Resolution, please.
I think you missed one, Mr. Chair.
I could. Oh, Mr. Rosalie Dory?
Oui.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. Mover and a seconder, please. Yes. It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Denise Senecal that a consent application made by Rosalie Dore to create one new lot and one lot addition on Canal Road in Sturgeon Falls, being part of Lot 6, Concession A in the Township of Springer, the municipality of West Nipissing. Through you, Mr. Chair, this property is located, fronts on Canal Road, but is located in behind the east side dwellings on Champagne Road. So I'm just going to go down there so we can get there. So this is the property here. So you'll see, and if you recall, the property was acquired, I'm going to say probably about 8 or 9 years ago. There were 3 lots taken off the front right here. And this lot here, actually 4 lots. And then this property was, I think the intention was to develop it, but it didn't actually transpire. And the new owner, so the person that has bought it now is the owner of the small property here. So what is being proposed is to add this chunk to this house and to take this lot off. I do not recommend that this lot addition extend to this portion here. This is a municipal road allowance that was left when the subdivision was created. I think that it would be a bad decision to block this. I know right now there's 1 lot in front of it, but in the future, should the municipality want to loop the services from Canal, and if this was to be developed further, this would be just one more landowner to have to negotiate with in order to loop those services. So my recommendation is that this lot addition be lessened such that it doesn't abut this municipal property at the end, just for future planning purposes in the event we wanted to loop water services.
Okay, I'm trying to. So what you're saying, it would be on the, I guess, the north side, or?
Yes.
This is on the north side of Canal Road.
In the, so we're talking the retained, okay, the lot addition, the Sever 2 now show 260 meter, I guess?
Yes.
And we would like to reduce it to whatever the width of that
It would be probably
Between,
about two.
the part that's
240.
located between lots 7 and 8. The lot addition should stop at the north boundary of lot 7 or the east boundary of lot 7.
That's correct.
And is that section wide enough for a road? Is that?
Yes,
would-
that piece that the municipality owns is 61 meters wide. It's pardon me, I'm lying. It's 20 meters wide. It's
Okay.
66 feet wide. It was left there as a road allowance, a future road allowance.
Okay, okay, so we don't want that to be blocked off.
That would not either, both Public Works and I have indicated that's not something we'd like to have happen.
Okay, and Mr. Goodrich or Mr. Goulet, do you have any comments on that one?
Certainly, and we don't mind the suggestion. It's good long-term planning. My clients, though, may need to be able to. There is a large drainage ditch through that area right now, and that's part of the reason the municipality kept that piece. It did provide drainage out to the river across Champagne. So my client, and I've discussed this with my client, they have no problem with reducing the amount of the lot addition, but in exchange for not having an ownership to that, they would like an easement over that final 20 meters wide for the width of the lot addition, so that they have the legal right to drain into that area, because eventually the retained land, or sooner, even maybe rather than later, the retained land may be sold to a developer. So they would like the opportunity to still be able to drain into the ditch. And they would also, they don't want to cut themselves off. So if there is a road built through there in the future for an access point out to Champagne, they want also an easement plus a right of way for access onto that land. Because typically if a developer was to develop the back land, they would put a 1 foot reserve around any other private owner to prevent them from having access to the road. So in the future, they want to ensure that that does not happen. And the only way that I can think of to make sure that happens is if we create two parts, one for an outright ownership stopping at the northeasterly limit of lot, or the production of the northeasterly limit of lot 7, but then create the second part as an easement and a right of way over the retained land for the width of the municipal ownership.
Now, if there's a drainage ditch that I guess that will go all the way to Canal Road, right?
Mr. Chair, Melanie wants to speak, I think.
Sorry.
My waving arm.
Oh, I didn't see you, sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to, I guess, if you see up on your screen, I brought up the ditch that Mr. Goodrich is referring to. You'll see that ditch starts here in the retained lands, and then it proceeds, there's a culvert, and it proceeds out into the river along this property over here. If this were to be developed, this would be road allowance, and there would be no need to have an easement. Road allowance would be public property. So I don't believe there's a requirement for that. The property's draining naturally into that right now. So I guess I'm kind of at a loss as to why this lot would require an easement when no one else does.
Yeah, me too. And furthermore, no, that seems to be a fair size area. Like I see the bush area with all that open land. It's all draining through there. So that ditch must be a fair size.
It is.
It is, eh? So I hope that I guess we can always address it 66 feet, 24 feet. Yeah, you can have a fair sized ditch and still a street beside it.
Well, and you can also pipe it.
I'm doing some mental calculation, but I agree with Melanie that we cannot provide any special, requests or accommodation, like as far as easement over municipal property. For whatever reason.
I'm sorry, just to clarify though, we're not asking for an easement over the municipally owned property. We're asking for that northerly 66 feet because that's still going to be private land until somebody develops that. My clients would have no access out through the municipal property. And also if they're draining, if they do anything on the lot addition lands and it increases the drainage into that ditch across private lands, like once that becomes municipal land, you're right, there's no need for the easement or the right of way. But, but
yeah, you got me lost there. The 20-meter strip between lot 7 and lot 8, who owns it? The one starting from Champagne Road there.
The municipality owns that.
The municipality owns it. That's okay. And what we're proposing there, or what's being recommended, is that the northeast boundary of Sever to be limited to stop in line with the northeast boundary of lot 7, right?
Correct.
That's what I'm recommending.
Okay. So I don't see all the other question about, you mean your easement, you want to keep it over that part that we're removing from the server 2? We have no jurisdiction there. It's not part of the thing. I don't see why you would want that, because that he would have to deal. I guess it's one ownership right now, and he wants to do a lot severance, and then he might sell the retain or whatever he wants to do. But whatever the future development requirement, I don't see the request there. And to impose an easement on a land that is not classified required to be a part. No, we will support the application, the severance 2, if he moves his boundary to the northeast limit of lot 7. In period, I don't think we go any further than that. That's my recommendation to the panel.
In addition to you, Mr. Chair, this committee does not have the authority to grant easements on municipal property. Only council can do that.
Yeah, right.
No, hang on. There's a total misconception here. We do not want an easement or a right-of-way over the municipal property. The amount that we're taking off the lot addition on the private land is going to be 66 feet wide for the width of the easement. It's that piece that we're reducing the lot addition by. The reason they extended the lot addition up to that drainage area was because they wanted the right to be able to drain into that area. Until the municipality acquires that 66-foot strip as a road or for any other reason, then like it's private and they sell the retained land, it becomes a separate private owner. And in order to drain water onto private land, we need an easement to be able to do that.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's why, but if we sell,
that's something he can deal with when, like now it'd be the same owner that owns the 3 parts.
that's correct. That's why it's easy to do it when we have a new owner on the retained land. The new owner may not be tremendously cooperative.
But you can come back next month and apply for that.
It'll be up to him to make it part of the deal. No, I'm selling you this property, but I retain the right of drainage. I don't think
Yeah.
it's up to us to impose it on future roads.
But we would still need severance consent for that. And
Yeah.
right now, we don't need severance consent if my client owns that piece. If the municipality wants us to set it aside for future planning purposes, this is the request in return. We have no objection reducing the amount of land that they own, but they have to have some way of being able to access that piece and to be able to drain water onto that piece.
So
And the
your
only
client
way-
can come back and apply
Yes.
for an easement
Yeah,
at a
that's
future
it.
meeting.
Well, if we own it, we don't need the easement. That's what I'm saying. If we're doing it, if the recommendation of this committee is that we reduce the amount that we're getting to support the municipality, we're simply asking, make it a condition that we get an easement in return.
Okay, Mr. Goodrich, we know your position. You're talking for, you're supporting your customer's request, but the committee will make the decision. So I'll ask them. I've said what I had to say. Yes, Mr. Roger.
Just a question. If I think I'm following Mr. Goodrich's idea. It's just that if they reduce the back of the property up to lot 7, it's that if ever they need drainage, do you want just to access that original drain that goes through that municipally owned access? So are you saying, Paul, that if you reduce that property by 20 meters and they sell the retained land, and if you put an easement on it, will that impede a future development of the retained land?
We don't believe so, because you still need to drain those lands.
Yeah.
So whatever they do with the like, if there was no municipal requirement for the drainage or for a potential road, then we wouldn't even be having this discussion. So in the future, like, and yes, it will impact the future development, but no more so than what the municipality's request would be at that point in time for a drainage easement themselves. So we're just, and once it goes to the municipality, then we can release and abandon any easements or rights of way we have, because we simply won't need them over the municipal land. But as long as until that happens, we need it across private land.
I understand, and it's just to make sure that these people that in severed 2 have access to that drainage ditch that goes through the rest of the property.
That's correct, and also to make sure that if there is a road put through, that a future developer would not put a 1-foot reserve along that side and prevent them from having access to it.
So then there could be a drain on both sides of the road allowance that would go through, that could collect any water from the back of lot addition or severed 2, that could then be drained across the street and then naturally to the river.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, I fully support that.
Yes. Yes,
Mr. Chair,
Milady?
I just wanted to draw your attention to the, can you see the screen? Can you see my screen with the blue line on it?
Yes.
Okay, so what I've done, I know this isn't quite as deep as, so my question to you, Mr. Goodrich, is right now this lot is in Madame Doré and her husband's name. This lot is in Madame Doré's alone. In order to add this to this, you have to change the ownership of this piece to match this piece. What is to prevent you, once this is changed, from coming back and applying for an easement over this property?
Well, absolutely nothing, but we're only reducing the amount we asked for. We wouldn't need an easement if my client outrightly owned that area. And we wouldn't need it, period, except that if this was just another private lot instead of a municipal lot, there would be no issue. We're reducing the amount that the Dorés wish to add to their property solely on the request of the municipality. And we're doing this, and we agree with it, to support long-term planning. But in exchange, we would like an easement over that portion of land and a right-of-way. That's all we're asking for. We wouldn't need either if it was not for the municipality's request.
Yeah, I fully understand your request, Paul, but personally I have a hard time supporting that because, that easement doesn't serve any purpose now. It's the same owner on both sides. And whenever he sells, he can negotiate that as part of the sale. The other way around, if he's got an easement, the person who wants to buy it will have to, will be landlocked or stuck or have to deal with that easement to be able to have access to the municipal portion. So I cannot solve one problem and create a future one. I'm willing to encourage the board, the committee to support the application as long as Sevier 2 is moved to the northeast limit of lot 7, period, nothing else. And I would like the opinion of the other members. Yes, Mr. Fisher.
So I think conceptually I understand what's going on, but I have to ask Mr. Goodrich. So I am having difficulty. I must say I'm having real difficulty because you already own all that property, and for us to say, yeah, there's a right of way across it, or I'm having real conceptual difficulty with that. But so your motivation, Mr. Goodrich, for your client is if we do this up front, they're going to save an application. Is that fair to say? Is that, I'm just trying to.
Exactly. We will save an application. It's $425. That's not a big deal.
Right.
But it also covers off all of these issues so that when they do sell the retained land, there's no further delay. So that right now, if the easement is already in place, number one, any prospective purchaser looking at it, it's registered on title. So they do their due diligence. They know exactly what it is they're buying. Otherwise, that has to be built into the agreement of purchase and sale, as Norm has suggested. But if it's there up front, they buy the land knowing full well that there is an easement and a right-of-way over that area. That further supports the municipality's intention of keeping that as a drainage area and an access point. The lines that are shown on the screen right now, the black lines for the Champagne lots, you'll notice they're a little out of whack with what the actual ownership of the land is. For example, the other side of lot 7, there's a very clear line of demarcation there, which is probably a lot closer to where the legal boundary is than where it shows on this. So if you shift that up, it does include a lot more of where the drainage actually is, because right now, if we only take 66 feet on top of the northeasterly blue line, it doesn't even touch the ditch. But I think it's just a matter of the line work being a little bit out of whack from those programs that you find online.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, Paul, yeah, I see that Mr. Dennis is second, and oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, well, I see your name there.
Dennis.
No,
Seneca?
but hey,
Seneca?
Fern.
Oh,
Fern at his end first and then Dennis.
Okay. I got two questions. The part that the municipality own, is there for the future access to this big property, right?
It was a subdivision that was created long before I was here, but typically when a subdivision is created and there's lands in behind, there's asked for a road allowance piece in the event that the property in behind be developed. So yes.
Okay, so that's the purpose of that. So the lot addition 2, that is, that the line is right now in the application. I don't know, to me, it seems fairly simple if we just do another part on this one, matching the municipality and having it have a right of way to the retained area. No?
Well, actually, Fern, like on that point, I do support Melanie's request that we limit the ownership, because in the future, the developer, even though he has a right of way over it, it doesn't give him the right to develop it as a municipal road. So it's actually better if the lot addition lands have a right of way over the developer's land, because if he puts a road there, it makes the right of way a moot point. They no longer need a right of way. And the developer then automatically transfers that land to the municipality. So at the time that it becomes municipal land, the easement for the drainage and the right of way are no longer required. They just go away. But as long as it's private land, we can't drain water onto private land legally without an easement to do so. And that's why we're asking, in order to support Melanie's request, that we draw the line back 66. My clients are willing to do that, but in order to accommodate their concerns, we're simply asking that an easement be allowed on that additional land beyond the ownership.
Okay. Now, Mr. Senecal has had his hand before, and back to you after Fern.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's pretty, first of all, Paul, I think you're the guys that are creating this problem, not the municipality. So for you to come and say that we need to give you, or you're doing us a favor in cutting back your land, you're not doing us a favor. We're doing you a favor. We're going to sever it. But you need to comply with what we need as the municipality. So to use the argument that they're doing us a favor by cutting back 66 feet or whatever, I don't buy that. This is and for us to sever that part of the land, it's impossible. It's not our job. So I don't know how you can go through it, but you've created this monster, so you'd figure a way to fix it, because we still need to protect the municipal land that's in there, the easement. Okay. So we can't put an easement in there.
No. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Senecal. I'll go to Melanie because she had her hand, and then it'll be Fern, and then it'll be Mr. Fisher.
I just wanted to point out there's nothing. Right now, we don't know exactly where the drainage is. We don't have any survey material. We don't know exactly. We have no topographic information. And I think if we were going to entertain a private easement between two property owners, that perhaps we should have a little more information and it be its own application in the future. If, for the committee to consider as these people still own both properties after this takes place, so they can certainly come back and ask for that easement as a standalone application. We can consider it on its own merits at that time.
Yeah, okay. Now, Fern?
Yes. Okay, I agree with shortening the line, like Melanie was saying, and I guess the easement for the drainage, it's not the drainage that's there for now, it's for the development. So It would be, I think the way to do it is shorten that severed two and come back with an application to the municipality to ask for a right of way over that part.
Okay, Mr. Fisher?
Oh, my mic's on. So I'm struggling with this conceptually, so I gotta ask Paul this. So if you want to get rid of those retained lands to a developer, it looks to me like if we move that boundary back to anyone who wants to develop it or buy that land, that surely makes that a more attractive piece to buy and develop with it moved. And then that deal there, that's where all that takes place. Like, to my mind, you know, it just makes a lot of sense. And what am I missing here? I don't get it.
Yeah, and I agree with the three last statements. I fully support that. I mean, we don't have any survey data of where that ditch is. The only thing is, and that's where Melanie's expertise come in, is there's an act, a municipal drainage act, enforced for the last 125 years, and that act has a lot of power also, and you cannot block a natural water course and all that. So that's why I'm kind of reluctant from previous farming, experience and dealing with the Drainage Act and other acts. I think I'm comfortable to support tonight, and I agree with Mr. Senecal fully. We draw the line at the northeast limit of Lot 7. If you want to come back with more data, a separate application that can stand on its own 2 feet, fine. But that's as far as this committee. I think I get a feeling, except for one vote, but there's 4 persons that see it differently. That's where we stand as of now. Any other comments on that? So, yes, Mr. Fisher.
I hate to belabor this because we've been on this one for a while, but I have to ask another question actually. So the lot that the addition is going to, I noticed when you bring up the big picture, so that lot, and it's got a line through it in lot 4, that cuts the building in half. How is that working? So go down to the bottom there, go south.
Oh, as Mr. Goodridge indicated, the line work on this, the overlay for the line work is out of whack.
Is way out of whack.
It's
so
about
this
far out of whack.
So 430, I'm talking about 430 and
Yeah.
430, that house is cut in half. So that house is not cut in half.
So just for, this line belongs here, this line belongs here, this line belongs here. It needs to be shifted up a little bit, but it's because we get our line work from MPAC and we get our aerial photography from a different supplier, and sometimes they don't. I always tell people, don't take it for cash. Otherwise,
so that house is not spread across 2 lots.
It is not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and sorry for that.
Okay, so I guess we've pretty well covered that issue.
There might be people in the public.
Okay, I'll put it in the public domain if they have anything, any comment, question, or hearing none. Mr.
Oh wait, no. I have a question. I have a few questions. Thank you. I am the owner of lot 5. So this lot addition is going to be passing through the end of my property.
Right.
And sorry, and I should note that lot 4, I think on that picture, it's a house in an original garage that was split in 2. So the current owners who applied for this own the garage, and it's an actual house. And so when I called the municipality last week, they explained that because it's a lot addition, they cannot actually build another house on that new L-shaped property, let's call it. But one of my questions is whether that garage that really looks like a garage but it's turned into a house, can they at some point turn that back into a garage and then actually build a house on that lot addition part? Concern about my privacy of my property.
Can I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
It would depend entirely on where that house sits. vis-a-vis the rest of the property and the setbacks, because obviously a dwelling has greater setbacks than accessory dwellings. So if that was to become the garage and a house, they have to be able to achieve all of the setbacks, front, back, and side, as you would for a dwelling. So the answer is conceivably, if the lot were to, if the lot could support that. And then obviously they'd have to decommission whatever dwelling is in the garage and then, or come back and ask for a zoning amendment, which would also be publicly circulated to maintain, say, the dwelling unit in that as well as another dwelling unit. So there would be another public process like this if that were to occur.
Okay, thank you. And do we know the purpose of the lot addition?
Mr. Goodrich?
Yeah, just additional land that they wanted to retain. I know they want to put a garden in the back. It's a fairly small lot where they are right now. So they are looking to do some work in behind. In terms of privacy though, Ms. Bailey, I think it's probably going to be a lot more private with the lot addition being approved than if that land was open for development and a whole series of houses perhaps being built right on your back property line.
So at this point, there's no plan to build a barn or a swimming pool or to use those lands? Because it's very wet.
Not to my knowledge at all.
And it's very wet behind those properties. So interesting talking about the drainage part.
Okay, any further to
Thank
that,
you.
ma'am? Okay, you're welcome. Anybody else has any comments? We haven't heard from you in a long time, Mr. Gagnon. You have any other comments?
No, I'm exactly 100% behind you with the if the lot addition line comes back to the north end of lot 7, and then if they want an easement to come back later.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess I'll call it to a vote. Everybody in favor as we recommended, with a small amendment we made with the northeast property line. Let me see. Yeah, I get. Okay, carried. And okay, now we'll go on to C-7921. A motion, please.
Chris, Dennis? It is moved by Chris Fisher and seconded by Denise Senecal that a consent application made by 9377819 Canada Inc. to create a new lot at 3707 Highway 539 in Field, being part of Lot 5 Concession 1, part of Part 1, 13960 in the Township of Gibbons. For you, Mr. Chair, this property, it's a fairly straightforward application. I believe it's what's being proposed here. This property was a subject of a severance, I'm going to say, what, 2 years ago, Paul?
2018.
This portion of the property was severed from this property. This property actually has a natural severance, but the highway down here and the railway down here, I do believe they own the north of the railway as well, correct, Paul?
To be honest, I'm not sure. It is a separate pin now.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of the ownership.
In any event,
I don't believe they do.
This lot was taken out. This was the retained lands. What is being proposed is to sever the retained lands. Both lots, as you can see, are well in excess of the minimums, 4 hectares and 2.7 hectares respectively. We didn't receive any comments from the MTO, notwithstanding that they were circulated. So obviously the owners know that they, they need to obtain an entrance permit from the from MTO prior to any kind of residential development.
Okay, any question or comments from the members? Any from the audience?
Mr. Fisher has his
Mr.
hand up.
Fisher?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that this property is right across the street. I can almost see it from where I'm sitting, and I know it well, and I don't think there's a problem. Thank you.
So you're in full support of it. Okay, then I guess I'll be calling the this to a vote. Everybody in favor as presented? Carried. And now to C8021, Renee Daou and Sandy Graff.
Roger, Fern. It is moved by Roger Gagnon and seconded by Fern Pellerin that a consent application made by Renee Daou and Sandy Graff to create one new lot at 135 Dubuque Road in Crystal Falls, being the east part of Lot 11, Concession 2 in the Township of Brant, Municipality of West Nipissing. Through you, Mr. Chair. Property is located on Dubuque Road. As you can see, it's a big property. There's an existing dwelling over here in this corner. So big you can't even see it, but it's over here. The existing dwelling is over here, way over here in this corner, and the proposed lot is way over here in this corner. This property is a mile deep and a quarter mile wide. And everything, there's no issues, no concerns from any party or anyone related.
Any question or comments from the members? Any question or comments from the audience? Hearing none, I'll call to a vote. Everybody in favor as circulated? Carried. And we'll go on to adjournment, please.
Oh, Kitty, you guys don't want to spend the rest of the night here? We're having a good time. Anyways, before we adjourn, I just want to thank everyone on this committee. You guys are always awesome to work with. I really appreciate it. And I want to wish all of you a very Merry Christmas. If I don't see you, some I will, some I won't. And I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and look forward to working with you in the new year. And we're looking at coming back here on January the 10th. So I need a mover and a seconder. And this, Fern. It is moved by Denise Senecal and seconded by Samantha Levin. Be it resolved that the West Nipissing Committee of Adjustment meeting is adjourned to January the 10th, 2021.
Okay, and I guess everybody's in favor.
No, it's 2022.
Oh, you know what? She wrote 20, one mistake tonight. Holy jumping.
Zap it, Roger.
2020, I don't think we want to go back and do 2021 again. No, 2022, my apologies.
Okay, so everybody's in agreement that it's going to be January 10, 2022. And have a Merry Christmas and take care during the festive season with you and your family. And hope we all see you in good health in January.
You too.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.